Well, hello, fellow fly fishers and future fellow fly fishers. Welcome back to my 10-part series on fly fishing for beginners. And today it's part 7B. And we're going to go through a couple very important casts. I think you're going to find them very useful. One is the roll cast. We're going to do it onside, offside, a narrow loop, a wide loop, show you how to do a bow and arrow cast, which I think is an underutilized cast. So the roll cast, you're going to use the roll cast when there's a couple reasons, but mainly when there's an obstacle behind you and you cannot do a back cast. You can also use it to raise your line up if it's sunk, so you can start to false cast or prepare yourself for another cast. You can also use it to unhook your fly if you get a snag on a log or a rock or something, if you're lucky. It's a long shot, but it can work. So those are very important casts. Let's talk a little bit about if you don't remember, grip, rod grip. You don't want to over grip the rod. I would suggest you hold it sideways and loosen your grip till it just starts to, your reel starts to fall, like so, okay? Not too tight. As a matter of fact, I would grip it a little loose because at the very end of the casting stroke on this roll cast, you could squeeze the rod and get a little more force at the very end of the casting stroke, which is going to help you throw a narrower loop, which of course is more aerodynamic. So let me just demonstrate the roll cast to you. There's a few things I want to talk about though before I go, I guess. We're going to be casting on grass. Casting on grass, doing a roll cast is difficult because you need something to substitute for that tension that's created between your line and the water, which you don't have. So I have a couple of roll cast tools in my hand that I'd like to show you. This is just simple screwdriver with a piece of wood attached to it and a slit cut down the middle, about 5/8 of an inch deep, maybe I don't know if it's very thin blade. You can use a hacksaw blade. I use a Japanese box saw blade. Then I have this that I made. It's called the casting. I call it the casting crown. But this is it's a little more, of course, complex and difficult to make than this. But I like this because it's really going to improve your short distance casting accuracy. Because every time you cast using this, you have to go back down, probably kneel down or bend down, put the fly back in. This you can cast to. And you want the fly, when you're ready to cast, positioned in any one of these slots, and it'll be you won't be able to see the yarn fly. It'll be facing this direction when you cast. You'll see. I'll show you. I'll cast into it. Uh, let me just demonstrate that cast to you guys. Okay, I'm going to go through the steps now very quickly, and then we'll talk about them more in detail as I perform this cast. Again, this is when you can't do a traditional back cast, you're going to want to use this cast. So I'm going to set my yarn fly into the casting tool. I'm going to sweep my rod tip back. I'm going to start low and I'm going to sweep back and I'm going to form a D loop. And if you look at my rod, that's the straight leg of the D, and then I would call it an anchor point, which you really want even with you or a little bit behind you. And you can see I kind of have a lazy shaped D. You're probably looking at it backwards, but it's a D. So you're going to form that D loop and you're going to pause at 1 o'clock. You want to check to make sure your line's not wrapped around the tip. And you're going to also want the rod canted out to the side. So if I was looking at a clock face, I would want my rod at 1 o'clock. So 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock. And I want you to pause right here, set up the cast. Then I'm going to hold the rod high, and I'm going to drive my elbow down to my side, and I'm going to stop the rod high, and I'm going to apply more force between, say, 10:30 and 10 o'clock to get a narrow loop. And I'm going to squeeze the rod at the very end. Then I'm going to stop at about 10, and then I'm going to drop the rod down following the line. So if you recall from part 7A when we did the pickup and lay down, I'm starting from about where our back cast stopped, if you remember. And I'm going to stop at about the same place out front. So here we go. There we go. That's about a 40-foot roll cast. Should have been a tight loop. I'll do it one more time with the steps. Okay, I'm going to sweep, form my D loop. I'm going to check to see it's not tangled. Bring it up to a pause at 1 o'clock. I'm going to drop my elbow, forward cast, stop at 10 o'clock, and I'm going to follow it down. There we go. Okay, let's talk a little bit more in detail about some other things with the roll cast. Okay, what I want you to notice is where my line is in relationship to my rod tip. When you do this cast, you have to have the fly outside the rod tip. The fly and the line on your anchor have to be outside of your rod tip. If I try to cast this direction and cross that line, I'm going to get a tangle. Now you don't want tangles when you're fishing, so you don't want a tangle. So the line and the anchor and the fly have to be on the outside of the rod tip. Now, let's say the wind's coming off or the current's blowing your line, taking it this way, you're going to do an offside roll cast, which is going to look just like the pickup and lay down on the other side. You're just going to rotate your hand over and do the same exact casting stroke. So that's important to remember. You want the fly and the anchor on the outside of you, depending on whatever side you're casting, on your right or left. It has to be to the outside. Okay, now you can slightly change directions with this cast. However, again, remembering I cannot change my direction. If I'm casting on my right side, my anchor's on the right side, I can't change direction to the right side. I have to change to the left, so I can go offside. I can change directions maybe, I don't know, over to 10 o'clock without too much trouble. Yeah, see, so that will work. That'll be fine. So those are a few things about the roll cast. This casting stroke that I'm showing you, I don't want to get into style too much, but believe me, I became a firm believer that it works. I am just dropping my elbow, and you can see as I drop my elbow, the rod tip moves quite a bit from 1 to 10. That's 90 degrees, and I'm not bending my wrist or flicking my forearm or flexing it at the elbow. I am just dropping my elbow, bang. And at the very end of this cast, you want to, again, squeeze the rod. So now let's just talk about a wide loop roll cast. I should demonstrate that now. Let's just talk briefly about that. So now I'm going to show you guys a wide loop roll cast. Now, there's the reason you want to use there's a couple reasons. One, if you're fishing with heavy flies, you don't want to throw too narrow. You want a wider loop. If you're fishing with an indicator and a fly or a dry dropper, you want a little wider loop. Now, to achieve the wider loop, all you really have to do is start to apply the force as soon as you start your casting stroke. Instead of waiting to the end, the narrow loop, slow, 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 fast. This one's going to be fast throughout the casting stroke. So I just start applying more acceleration from the beginning. So it should look like this. That was a wider loop. Let's do it again. There it is. You can do the same thing offside. You just want to throw that wider loop, like when I said heavier flies, multiple flies, indicator rigs, dry droppers. Some of the weeds like to catch the line a little more than others. Starts the same way. Sweep back, form that D loop. Make sure it's not tangled on the end of your rod. Start at 1 and 1. Apply power throughout the stroke. There you go. That should give you a wider loop. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about an underutilized cast, in my opinion, which is the bow and arrow cast. The bow and arrow cast, if you get really good at it, you can cast 35 feet, maybe a little further. But as a beginner, what I would recommend you do, let's say you're fishing, you got a fly in your hand. What you want to do is you've got 9 feet of rod if you bought a 9-foot rod. You've got 7.5 or 9 feet of leader. And then you've got some type of a wingspan, however tall you are. So you really just want to grab the fly, get your line rolled up, pin it again. You always want to pin the line like this. I didn't talk about that, but you always want to have it pinned under your finger. You'll grab the fly by the hook bend, so the point's sticking out, so you don't hook yourself. And then you'll just bend the rod and let go. And you'll be surprised that you can hit 20 feet. Now I want to cast a little further, let's say. I'm getting pretty good at this. I need to cast a little further. Now you're going to use this cast when there's just too much obstruction around you, overhead, to the sides, behind you. You want to place it in a small target where there's a lot of brush around you can't cast, okay? That's when you're going to use this cast. Really good for stream fishing, streams and creeks. And small rivers, I would say. Okay, so what you want to do is loop your line, but always keeping the line that's coming off the rod closest to your hand. So the loops are like so. And you can make it a little bigger than that, but you don't have to. Now that will give me another, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet on the cast. Let me just show you some of these casts. The thing with probably the safety thing here too is you'll want to hold it out to the side a little bit. You don't want this line coming directly. You don't want to pull it back here and shoot like this with the line alongside your face. You want to keep it away from your body. You don't want to hook yourself in the air. Okay, I have a target set out there at 20 feet. I'm going to try to hit that little cone. Let's see what happens. I was on the cone. I don't know if you can see it from there, but I was about 2 inches from the cone. So very accurate cast. Get good at it. Practice this cast. Now, I want to shoot a little bit further. Let's say I see a fish out there at 25 feet. So I'm going to coil and pull off 5 more feet of line. And I'm going to make a coil or a loop in my hand like so. That's at 26 feet, a little off to the side. So I might even be able to get 30. Let's see. So don't underestimate this cast. Practice it just like all the others, and you'll find it's going to be something that you want in your bag of tricks that you'll use. That was at 30 feet. So, thanks for watching part 7B. I might do a short video on making that roll cast crown. It's really a great tool. I can't stress to you how important it is just to be able to cast 20 to 25 feet very accurately, and that's going to really help you. All right, I'll see you next time. Next time I do any of this, we'll be fishing, I hope. I'm going to try to get on the water soon, but anyway, thanks for watching this, and take care.